Welcome to the Joe Cohen Show. Join me as I share my experience with biohacking and invite top health experts to explore the latest technology, supplements, research, and resources for optimizing your body and brain. Okay, today we're going to be talking about glutamate. The reason why glutamate is so interesting is because it's one of the biggest causes of anxiety. It's related to OCD. It's related to overactivity in the brain, and overactivity in the brain can cause a lot of different issues. Before we start, if you want to see if you have high glutamate levels, we have a questionnaire in Self-Decode that can help you determine if you have high glutamate levels. Things that glutamate causes. So it can cause headaches, seizures, cognitive dysfunction, nervousness, tinnitus, dizziness, mood swings or depression, paranoia or delusions, increased stress or anxiety. Physical symptoms include muscle twitching or spasms, tremors, nausea, fatigue, or lethargy. Other symptoms include impaired motor coordination, loss of appetite, sensory disturbances. And it's also related to a bunch of different conditions like neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS. We discussed epilepsy and seizures, stroke, MS, schizophrenia, chronic pain disorders, anxiety, depression, autism, traumatic brain injury. And the reason why higher glutamate can express in one way or another is because of genetic differences. So sometimes you could have high glutamate, but if you're not at risk for schizophrenia, you won't have schizophrenia. It also depends on where the glutamate is high in the brain. So different areas can have different effects. And also, usually there's not just one neurotransmitter that causes something. It's usually if there's a neurotransmitter that's high or low, and then there's other factors at play, then you could have a condition. For example, you're not going to have Alzheimer's or traumatic brain injury if you just have high glutamate, but these are associated, which means that in these conditions, you have high levels of glutamate. And a lot of times it's causal. I would say autism is probably a better example. If you have high glutamate, you're not going to have autism, but autism, one of the mechanisms by which autism comes about is through higher glutamate. And there could be 20 different mechanisms, right? These are complex diseases, polygenic diseases, which means they have many different components, many different genes, many different biochemical pathways. And by the way, that's why when we look at any of these conditions, any of the things that I mentioned, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, all these things, you can't look at one gene or one SNP. You have to look at thousands or millions because there's so many different pathways involved. That's what we do at Self-Decode. Whereas that's one of my big gripes with other companies that are trying to look at genetics for these kinds of things. When you're dealing with a very complex issue, then you can't just look at one SNP or one variant or one gene. But getting back to this, all because you have high glutamate, it doesn't mean that you will have a condition. However, the thing that most relates to glutamate, in my experience, is OCD, so obsessing, not being able to let go, and anxiety. So those are the two things that, if you have high glutamate, it's pretty much going to cause those, even if you don't have any other or not too many other factors at play. Meaning a lot of conditions, for example, you might need mitochondrial dysfunction, you might need a whole bunch of other issues to be problematic, maybe some brain damage. But in this case, anxiety or OCD, you can have them as a very young kid, which means that nothing is going on, right? You could have these issues easily at 6 or 10, anxiety or OCDs. We see these behaviors in young people who are even healthy. So all you need is like higher glutamate and this can occur. What got me interested in this neurotransmitter? I'm interested in pretty much every neurotransmitter. The two I would say that are most interesting is serotonin and glutamate. Maybe dopamine is number 3. The other ones like GABA, norepinephrine, I would say are less interesting, meaning they're still quite important. But I would say serotonin has been definitely a very big obsession of mine for a long time. And I would say I'm getting more into glutamate now. Glutamate is a very important neurotransmitter to understand because I notice a lot of my clients have high glutamate levels. Why am I interested? Besides clients who have high glutamate levels, there were a few experiments that I did that increased my glutamate. One was I took high levels of AKG, and actually biochemically, according to research, if you take high levels of AKG, that converts into glutamate. And so When I took high levels of AKG, I felt very much like a lot of anxiety and also OCDs. So pretty much like I said, nothing else wrong in the brain. Brain is completely healthy. All I did was jack up this AKG and glutamate just took over. And when glutamate took over, it was interesting. It caused a lot of motivation because it was actually too much. It almost caused a little bit of helplessness. So these were examples where it went way too far. Then you have proline, which again, I took too much and the same thing happened. And again, these are much more than doses that are recommended. I took 15 grams of AKG, but even something like 5 grams could cause it. I just maybe wouldn't have noticed it as strongly. And then proline, normally you're going to take maybe 1 gram. I was taking like 5 grams. And again, I noticed it pretty acutely. So proline also, when you take that, it goes into glutamate. Arginine is the newest one I found. So this is interesting because this was not as clear only when I was taking 5 grams for a sustained period, and I'm still on it actually. This is a little different because it causes anxiety in two ways. One is through increasing glutamate, one is through nitric oxide. So there's some like oxidative stress component to anxiety as well. And nitric oxide is one form of oxidative stress. So when I take high levels of arginine for a prolonged period, I notice that my anxiety levels go up. Normally, I don't have anxieties. It's actually quite interesting to see that I'm taking 5 grams of arginine, but I also take 5 grams of citrulline and I take them together. So I'm taking 10 grams altogether, 5 grams arginine, 5 grams citrulline. Together, that seems to cause an increase in glutamate, also nitric oxide. So it doesn't have the same effect as AKG or proline, but it has somewhat of a similar effect. Now, I actually like the effect more with this arginine because the anxiety I got from AKG was like this, it was too much. Same with proline. With arginine, it there's a similar kind of anxiety, but it's also like this energy that you get from it. It's like a motivation anxiety. It's like I got to get shit done kind of anxiety. What I found is that it's made me more motivated than I've ever been in my life. But that motivation comes through anxiety, right? So you can have anxiety, you can have motivation through anxiety, or you could have motivation just in general through, let's say, dopamine, maybe some excess energy. But I find that the anxiety motivation allows me to do things that I wouldn't normally want to do. It allows me to pretty much do anything. I could do boring work, or the different kinds of motivation can cause you to do different things. And this anxiety motivation causes me to do anything. And again, I wouldn't say that people would notice I have anxiety, but I just feel it. I feel I'm like more OCD, more anxious. And that's from taking high doses of L-arginine. And I wasn't sure what it was until I started doing more experiments on it because I knew it was like, why am I basically changed the regimen to increase L-arginine. And I noticed that it had that effect. So through this approach, it caused me to figure out what are some of the things that I need to do to lower glutamate, because on the one hand, I want this motivation. On the other hand, I need to balance it sometimes throughout the day with other things. So I'm going to go through some of the other things. And by the way, there's a few other things that supposedly increase glutamate, but I can't say I've noticed it acutely. Those include glutamine, histidine, ornithine, and pyroglutamate. I've taken those in large doses. And I can't say I've noticed yet any increases in glutamate from those. But theoretically, those can do it as well. These are amino acids. So glutamate can convert into glutamine, GABA, AKG, proline, glutathione, ornithine, and citrulline. So one of the things is because I'm taking citrulline, first of all, citrulline can then convert into ornithine and arginine. And so it's just that whole pathway. I'm taking citrulline and then arginine as well. That means that there's just less likely to convert into that, and it's going to be more likely to glutamate is just going to actually just stay around and not convert into those things if I have excess levels of those things. Now, what's interesting is actually, funny thing is that depending on how I increase glutamate, the therapy also differs. For example, I remember when I took high levels of AKG, I felt really good from niacin and B6, and those basically were the best things for glutamate from proline or AKG. When I took high levels of arginine, the best things actually was glycine, right? So B6 still helped, niacin still helped, and all the things that help with glutamate still help. But I actually found that glycine was the best thing that helped for some reason, right? Glycine can lower glutamate. Now, the reason why glycine lowers glutamate is because you need three neurotransmitters to convert into glutathione. You need glycine, NAC, and glutamate. So when you have two of these if you have excess glutamate, then if you have the other neurotransmitters like NAC or cysteine and glycine, then it will convert into glutathione. Now, I'm taking 1,800 milligrams twice a day of NAC, and I'm also taking. So basically, the rate limiting factor for glutathione production wasn't the glutamate, it wasn't the NAC, it was actually just the glycine. Now, even though I was taking 10 grams of glycine a day, I found that if I take 20, 30 grams, actually, it lowered it even more. So it's a dose dependent effect, and it lasts about 2 hours. So that means that I need to keep on redosing if I want to feel that calm effect. Now, I'm going to go through some of the things that basically, like, you need different cofactors for different pathways. And the reason that this is important is because a lot of people have high glutamate, and the more things you do, the more you can reduce glutamate. So, one is if you have enough magnesium, you could take glutamate and convert it into glutamine. You can also block the glutamate receptors, the NMDA receptors, and that also helps block the effects of glutamate. So magnesium is one of them. B6 helps increase the conversion of glutamate into GABA. So GABA is that relaxing neurotransmitter. Again, that is one pathway that works well. AKG, to convert glutamate into AKG, you need a couple different things like B6, magnesium, and NAD+. So good levels of energy. And you could also convert it into proline, which you need NADH, niacin, B vitamins, magnesium. So those are the different pathways that you need for glutamate. Now, I'm going to go through each of the things that help me quite a lot. NAC seems to help the most, or one of the most, no matter what the source of glutamate is. So I remember the AKG, the proline, and now the arginine experiments. NAC helps. Now, it doesn't help as much for arginine, but in this case, for some reason, glycine works better. So when I was taking high doses of AKG and proline, NAC worked the best, or one of the best, right? NAC, niacin, and B6 were the top three for sure. With my arginine experiment, glycine for some reason works the best. Vitamin C works also good for both of them, right? I would say I actually didn't try it back then, but it definitely works quite well to lower glutamate. So when it comes to glutamate, it really depends on what the rate limiting factor is. And you could change that rate limiting factor. For example, if I take a ton of vitamin C, which I could take 12 grams a day pretty easily, then the rate limiting factor becomes something else. And then just taking more doesn't necessarily reduce glutamate. But vitamin C is also something that reduces glutamate. So I'm going to go through all the top things that reduce glutamate that I've noticed help a lot, not just in the research, but I've noticed personally when I increase the glutamate levels. And I wouldn't say, by the way, I'm somebody who just increases, like I have high levels of glutamate in general. If I'm healthy, I would say my glutamate levels are probably normal. It's just that because of certain supplements, like in this case now arginine, before it was AKG and proline, but because I'm artificially increasing it, I get to experience it as if I had very high levels. So NAC helps a lot for sure. P5P helps a lot. Not the pyridoxine hydrochloride, but it has to be the P5P, which is the active form of B6. Niacin helps a lot. Again, dose dependent. So you got to take enough niacin, enough B6. Vitamin C helps a lot. I noticed definitely the decrease in glutamate. Glycine helps a lot. B1 helps a fair bit, but limiting returns. L-rhamnosus GG helps. I can't say exactly how much yet, but it definitely helps. And then there's magnesium, which I would say helps moderately. The reason is because you can't take too much of it. So NAC, you could go up to 1,800 milligrams twice a day. Magnesium, you're going to shit your pants if you go more than 400 milligrams twice a day. So I would say that I've done the higher doses of magnesium. It helps, but the problem is it feels like it feels like it does what it's supposed to do, which is just block the NMDA receptors. And then as the magnesium goes away, it gets unblocked. And so it doesn't actually take down the glutamate levels, at least not significantly. It's a cofactor in certain reactions that could theoretically help, but it doesn't do it specifically. Fish oil helps moderately. Taurine helps moderately. Inositol helps moderately. Again, more for certain kinds of glutamate. Bacopa helps moderately by increasing GABA, I found. Zinc helps moderately. Saffron helps moderately. And lemon balm, which has rosmarinic acid, helps moderately. Lithium orotate helps moderately. Theanine helps a bit. I would say it helps moderately. Again, it depends on what kind. So I would say that for some reason, the arginine anxiety, it helped more, the less so with the other ones. And then tryptophan also helps. If you increase your serotonin levels through tryptophan or 5-HTP, it's also going to help bring down glutamate. So they kind of balance each other, serotonin and glutamate, same as if you increase GABA, it's going to just help it calms the brain down. So it opposes some of the reactions of glutamate. And so that's what I would say. I'll go through the dosing that I would take basically during if I have high levels of glutamate. L-rhamnosus, you have to take a lot of, so at least 100 billion, whereas they're selling it in less. B1, you're going to take at least 50 milligrams 2 times. Glycine, you're going to take 5 grams, or I even take 7 grams, and I could take that 4 or 5 times a day easily. By the way, this is not a recommendation. This is just a description of what I am doing if I have high anxiety from glutamate or just any anxiety from glutamate. Vitamin C, I'll take 3 grams 4 times a day. Niacin, I'll take 250 milligrams 2 times a day. And then P5P, I'll take 50 milligrams 2 times a day. NAC, I'll take 1,800 milligrams 2 times a day. Now, why am I taking these dosages? Because if you take more, there could be some potential long-term risk. There's even potential long-term risk if you take these dosages. But I would say that given the cost benefit, overall it's pretty safe. So 1,800 milligrams times 2, high dosage of NAC, but overall pretty safe. P5P, 50 milligrams times 2, higher dosage, but overall safe. 250 milligrams niacin, high dosage, but safe, twice a day. 12 grams of vitamin C, so that's 3 grams times 4. I take the liposomal, high dosage, but safe overall. There's some risks for all of these things, by the way, so I wouldn't say that they're risk-free. But for example, higher vitamin C can cause kidney stones, but I would say overall it's pretty good. Glycine, I'm not sure what the risks are for that, but that's a longevity agent. I actually find 7 grams pretty good. I just found the scoop, and it happens to be when they fill the scoop up at 7 grams. So I'm like, all right, I'll take 7 grams. And yeah, I don't know. I found it pretty good. So they give high doses in these longevity studies and it works. So if I take 7 grams, yeah, I could take easily, like I've taken 30 grams a day pretty easily without any side effects. And the same with rhamnosus. So that is my approach to lower glutamate. And again, you can know if you have glutamate based on any of the conditions that I've mentioned, and sometimes even from not conditions that I mentioned. We'll go through some more, or just in general. Brain fog could be from high glutamate. It could be from other issues too. Headaches and migraines could be from high glutamate. Anxiety or restlessness. Insomnia. I notice my sleep gets worse. I wake up in the middle of the night more, and it has to do with just my brain is overacting more. Fatigue or weakness. So chronic overstimulation can exhaust neurons. I don't find this from arginine actually, but I did find it from AKG and proline. So again, they have different effects. It's not the same, but I do notice that with arginine, I actually get more energy. So it's not the same as the other ones. Nausea or digestive issues. So high glutamate can cause discomfort, sensitivity, muscle pain or tension. Again, that's through the like jaw fibromyalgia or just bruxism or different things. These can be from higher glutamate. Irritability or mood swings. I do find that I'm more irritable when my glutamate is higher. Depression-like symptoms. Again, this is more from AKG or proline if you take it chronically. I mentioned the neurological disorders, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, stroke, anxiety disorders, depression, schizophrenia, migraines, fibromyalgia, autism, ALS, glutamate metabolism disorders. Yeah. So in general, if you have any of these issues, I would say that lowering glutamate is not necessarily going to fix it on its own, but it's definitely one of the causes or contributing factors. Actually, I'm going to look up some mine. Let's see what I have. If I type in glutamate, so there's a GAD1 enzyme, and it shows that I have worse levels of that. So what that does is it converts glutamate to GABA. So my conversion of glutamate to GABA is not as good. That doesn't mean that only means that if I overload the system, it's not going to convert it to GABA efficiently. And I would say that makes sense for me, actually. The glutamate levels, though, are typical, which probably makes sense because baseline, I have no problem. And then there's a key gene for glutathione production, which I have a problem for. It's slower activity. What this gene does, it's the GCLC gene. And let's see what it does. It's linked to higher mercury levels in the hair and blood. It seems like it's related to making glutathione. Yeah, I probably do have a problem creating glutathione here. This is just one gene in that glutathione pathway. I do have a problem. If I overload the glutamate system, it won't convert into GABA, which is actually quite interesting because sometimes you hear that if you take high levels of AKG, it makes people tired. Interesting enough. And what I think is happening there is this depends on the genetics, because for me, if I overload myself with AKG, it's just going to increase glutamate. It makes me anxious. And then the conversion from glutamate to GABA takes a long time. So it doesn't make me tired. Maybe it'll make me tired later, but it doesn't make me tired right away. The GABA, increasing the GABA can make you tired. What it does is, but for some people, if they have a very efficient conversion process from glutamate to GABA, maybe overloading that system can then increase GABA and then it makes them tired, which is interesting. So I think it's heavily dependent on your genetics here. If you like this podcast, make sure to subscribe, send some love, sign up for Self Decode, and and check it out. There's a lot of genetic risks involved with glutamate. 67% of listeners aren't subscribed to the show, so please don't forget to show your support by hitting the subscribe button now. You'll not only be supporting the show, but also investing in yourself and your health journey, all while helping to keep us ad-free.